Emily Carter woke up to the soft morning light filtering through the sheer curtains, the gentle hum of the city outside, blending with the quiet laughter of her 3-year-old son, Liam, who was already busy stacking his colorful blocks on the living room carpet. She smiled softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face as she watched him, her heart swelling with a mixture of love and a lingering unease she couldn't quite name. David was still asleep in their bedroom, the faint rise and fall of his chest, a comforting rhythm If you loved this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more suspense. Had grown used to over their 10 years together. The house smelled faintly of coffee and fresh linen, a comforting scent that usually made Emily feel at peace. But today there was a subtle tension she couldn't shake. She remembered the strange phone call she had received last night, a voice on the other end too quiet to understand, but urgent enough to leave a shiver crawling down her spine. Shaking it off, she told herself it was nothing, a trick of her imagination, and focused instead on Liam, who now called for her to help him reach the top of his tallest tower of blocks. As she bent down to lift him, Liam's laughter echoed through the room, pure and innocent, and Emily couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt that she sometimes noticed cracks in the perfect life she tried so hard to maintain. David had been different lately, distracted and restless, spending longer hours at work and returning home late with excuses that seemed plausible, but left her uneasy. She wondered if she was imagining things, if the subtle glances and hurried messages she sometimes glimpsed on his phone were signs of paranoia rather than truth. Yet, a tiny voice in her mind whispered that something wasn't right, that secrets were quietly brewing behind the walls of their seemingly perfect home. She sighed and decided to focus on the morning routine, getting Liam ready for preschool, preparing breakfast, and smiling through it all as if everything was normal. By mid-morning, the sun had climbed higher, casting a warm glow across their garden where Liam played under the watchful eyes of Emily. The roses she had planted last spring were in full bloom, a delicate reminder of happier, simpler times, before whispers of doubt began to creep into her thoughts. David appeared at the doorway, his tie loosened, a tired smile on his face, and Emily felt a brief sense of relief. He picked up Liam, spinning him around with a laugh, and for a moment, the tension in her chest eased, replaced by the warmth of family love that always seemed to anchor her. Yet as she watched them, her heart skipped a beat when she noticed the fleeting shadow of hesitation in David's eyes, a momentary flicker that didn't match the joy he tried so convincingly to display. Emily shook her head, telling herself she was overthinking, but deep down, she felt the stirrings of a mystery that would soon demand her attention, something lurking just beneath the surface of their perfect life, waiting to reveal itself in ways she could never have imagined. Lunch passed quietly, with Liam chattering about imaginary adventures, while Emily forced herself to laugh and respond, hiding the gnawing unease that had grown steadily over the past weeks. She found herself glancing at the clock, wondering why David had suggested a late meeting at work today, a sudden change from his usual routine, and a shiver ran down her spine as a faint memory surfaced, a conversation she had overheard months ago, a name whispered in secrecy, something that now felt ominously significant. She pushed the thought aside, taking a deep breath and reminding herself that love, even when complicated, was stronger than suspicion. Yet, the feeling lingered, a quiet tension that refused to be ignored, hinting at truth that would soon pierce the heart of their family life in ways she was unprepared for. By evening, the sky had turned a soft shade of amber, and Emily found herself alone in the garden, Liam asleep upstairs and David still at work, the house unnervingly quiet. She sat on the bench, her hands folded in her lap, replaying the small, seemingly insignificant moments of the day. The hurried glances, the whispered messages, the faint unease that had settled like a shadow over their home. She realized that her perfect world was fragile, delicate, and perhaps more fragile than she had ever been willing to admit. Somewhere out there, a secret was waiting, a truth that could shatter the life they had built with love and devotion, and Emily felt, with a clarity that was almost painful, that her journey to uncover it was about to begin. The next morning, Emily awoke with a sense of unease that had become almost familiar, as though her subconscious refused to grant her peace until the mysteries lurking in her home were uncovered. Liam was already awake, humming softly to himself as he arranged his toys, blissfully unaware of the invisible tension that now hung over the house. Emily kissed him on the forehead, smiling through the worry gnawing at her chest, and wondered again why David had been acting differently lately. The previous night's shadows seemed heavier now, pressing on her thoughts like a storm gathering beyond the horizon. She tried to focus on the ordinary tasks of breakfast and school preparations, but every small sound, the click of the front door, the hum of her phone, the faint rustle of paper, seemed to carry hidden meanings, as though the house itself was trying to whisper secrets she was not yet ready to hear. David returned home later than usual, the evening sky streaked with gold and pink as he parked the car outside. Emily noticed the fatigue etched on his face, the faint worry lines that were new, the subtle tension in his shoulders that seemed to radiate unease rather than relief. He kissed her lightly on the cheek, his touch distant, almost distracted, and Emily's stomach twisted. She wanted to confront him, to ask what was going on, but something in his eyes held her back, a mixture of love and something darker that she couldn't yet name. She busied herself with dinner, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables a small comfort against the storm of suspicion brewing silently in her mind. Liam chatted about his day at preschool, his words bright and innocent, but Emily could barely hear them over the steady drum of worry that seemed to echo in every corner of the house. Later that night, as Liam slept, Emily sat on the edge of their bed, scrolling through her phone for no particular reason, when a message flashed on David's screen. Her breath caught as she read the words, a small exchange from someone named Sophia, a name she had never heard before. It was casual, almost mundane, but the intimacy implied by the words made her heart hammer in her chest. She stared at the screen, unable to look away, feeling as though the floor beneath her had shifted slightly, revealing a hidden void she had never imagined existed in her life. Questions collided in her mind. Who was she? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, why had she been kept a secret? The calm, perfect life she had believed in suddenly seemed like a fragile facade, a house of glass ready to shatter at the first touch of truth. Emily didn't know how long she sat there, her mind racing, until a quiet sound drew her attention to the window. Outside, the street was empty, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights, but a fleeting shadow moved past the corner of her vision, almost imperceptible. She shook her head, trying to convince herself that it was nothing, perhaps a trick of the light, but the sensation of being watched lingered, prickling at her skin and fueling a growing sense of dread. She realized then that the life she had trusted, the family she had believed in, might have been a carefully constructed illusion, and that the secrets hidden behind closed doors were far more dangerous than she had ever feared. The following days brought subtle signs of David's deception, small but unmistakable. A sudden business trip that seemed unusually timed. A phone call hurriedly ended when she entered the room. the faint scent of perfume lingering in his clothes. Emily felt trapped between disbelief and fear, unable to confront him without proof, yet unable to ignore the mounting evidence that something had shifted irreversibly. She began to observe him closely, noting the cadence of his words, the hesitation in his movements, the brief flicker of guilt that sometimes crossed his eyes before he masked it with a practiced smile. Every interaction became a delicate dance, the tension between them growing unspoken and heavy, until even Liam seemed to sense it, his innocent questions and sudden tears a silent reflection of the cracks spreading through their family. One afternoon, Emily decided to take Liam for a walk to the nearby park, needing air and distance from the storm building inside their home. As she pushed the stroller along the winding paths, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, that the shadows themselves were whispering truths she was not yet ready to confront. Her mind returned again and again to the messages, to the secrecy, to the gnawing question of how well she truly knew the man she had married. The wind rustled the leaves above, carrying with it the faintest hint of a warning, and Emily shivered, sensing that the day was coming when the invisible walls holding her life together would finally crumble, exposing every hidden betrayal, every secret carefully guarded behind smiles and routines. She promised herself that when that day came, she would be ready to face the truth, no matter how devastating it might be. By the time they returned home, the sky had darkened, and the first stars were beginning to pierce the night. Liam fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's play, while Emily stayed by the window, watching the world, outside feeling a quiet storm brewing within her. She knew, with a certainty that frightened her, that her life was about to change, that the hidden threads of deception would soon unravel, and that the family she had loved so fiercely might never be the same again. The shadows of secrets were closing in, and Emily understood that the calm she had once taken for granted was gone forever, replaced by a suspenseful tension that promised heartbreak, revelation, and the beginning of a journey she could neither avoid nor ignore. The next morning, Emily felt a strange pull in her chest, an unease she couldn't shake, as if the walls of their home were closing in with silent whispers. Liam giggled from the corner of the room, chasing his small toy car, oblivious to the tension that had started to seep into every corner of Emily's thoughts. She kissed his forehead, brushing the soft curls from his eyes, and made a quiet promise to protect him from the storms she feared were coming, though she didn't yet know their shape or source. After breakfast, a desire for clarity led her to step outside, the crisp morning air filling her lungs as she decided to take Liam for a walk to the local cemetery, a quiet place she had visited in childhood, where the silence always seemed to speak louder than words. The cemetery was tranquil, the tombstones standing like silent sentinels beneath the rising sun. Liam wandered between them, touching the weathered stones with innocent curiosity, while Emily followed, her gaze drifting over the rows of names, imagining the stories behind each one. It was there she first noticed Mr. Thompson, the elderly caretaker, leaning on his cane as he observed her from a distance. His face was lined with years of knowledge, eyes sharp despite the slow shuffle of his movements. As she approached him, he gave a slow nod, a gesture of acknowledgement. But there was something in his gaze that made her uneasy, a weight she could not explain. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice low but firm, carrying a weight that seemed to press against the calm of the morning. "Your boy has energy enough to light the city," he added with a soft chuckle, gesturing toward Liam. Emily smiled politely, though her mind was already alert, sensing there was more behind his words. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson." He loves running around here. It's peaceful, Emily replied, trying to maintain casual conversation while her instincts screamed that this man had something important to say. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper that seemed almost conspiratorial. Stop. Watch what your husband is really doing at home. There are secrets that walls cannot keep hidden forever, and some truths are dangerous only when ignored. Emily froze, her heart hammering violently in her chest. She stared at him, unsure if she had misheard, if this was some old man's paranoia. But the intensity in his eyes left no room for doubt. There was urgency, a plea almost, in the way he looked at her, as if he had seen what she could not. Mr. Thompson, I don't understand, she whispered, a cold tremor running through her body. Liam tugged at her sleeve, breaking her focus, and she forced a reassuring smile for him, though inside a storm of fear and confusion had begun to take hold. Just watch, he said simply, tipping his hat before moving down the gravel path, leaving Emily with a strange mixture of dread and curiosity. She glanced at Liam, whose innocent gaze met hers, and felt a surge of protectiveness. Something was wrong, she could feel it deep in her bones, and the calm she had tried to cling to was slipping like sand through her fingers. She returned home, her mind spinning with questions, the cryptic warning echoing in her thoughts. What could David be hiding? How long had he been hiding it? And most terrifyingly, what would she find if she truly looked? Later that evening, Emily found herself wandering through the house in a restless haze, her hands brushing over familiar surfaces that now seemed foreign, almost menacing. Every sound, every shadow, became a potential clue, and she found herself checking drawers, scanning rooms, imagining what secrets might be hidden in plain sight. Her eyes fell on David's study, the door slightly ajar, a soft light spilling into the hallway. She knew she shouldn't, that it was an invasion of trust, but the warning from Mr. Thompson gnawed at her resolve, demanding action. With trembling hands, she pushed the door open and stepped inside, the familiar smell of books and leather mingling with something she couldn't quite identify, a faint hint of perfume that sent chills down her spine. On the desk lay a folder she hadn't noticed before, partially hidden under David's papers. Curiosity and fear battled in her chest as she reached for it, pulling it into the light. Inside were photographs, receipts, and letters that immediately made her blood run cold. Evidence of an affair, a life she had been blind to, secrets kept so meticulously that even a hint of them seemed impossible. Her hands shook as she held the documents, the truth settling over her like a dark cloud, heavy and suffocating. She sank into the chair, clutching the folder to her chest, and for the first time allowed herself to cry, the quiet sobs echoing in the stillness of the study. Liam's laughter upstairs seemed distant and fragile, a stark contrast to the breaking of her heart, and Emily realized that nothing would ever be the same again. That night, Emily lay awake in the darkened bedroom, the folder still clutched tightly to her chest, her mind a storm of betrayal, confusion, and sorrow. Liam slept soundly in his crib, unaware of the fracture that had begun to form in his world, and Emily felt an overwhelming urge to shield him from the pain she now carried alone. The soft hum of the city outside, once comforting, now felt intrusive, as if the world itself was whispering truths she wasn't ready to face. When David finally returned home, the familiar click of the front door made her heart pound with a mixture of anticipation and fear. She heard his footsteps approaching, slow, deliberate, and she knew the moment of reckoning had arrived. David appeared in the doorway, his face weary but attempting the practiced warmth she had always loved. He smiled faintly, as though nothing had changed, and yet Emily saw through the facade, the subtle tension in his jaw, the quick flicker of guilt in his eyes. She stood rigid, holding the folder tightly, feeling its weight like a tangible reminder of the betrayal that had infiltrated her life. "David," she said softly, her voice trembling yet firm, "we need to talk." He nodded slowly, the smile faltering as he sensed the gravity of her tone, and motioned for her to sit on the edge of the bed. Emily placed the folder between them, pushing it forward so he could see the evidence she had uncovered. His eyes widened slightly, a brief flash of panic, before he quickly masked it with an expression of calm she no longer trusted. "Emily, I can explain," he began, his voice low, carefully measured, but she cut him off with a shaking hand. "Explain? David, how long has this been going on? Who is she? Why didn't you ever tell me?" The questions poured out, a torrent of grief and anger, and for the first time David's composure faltered. He ran a hand through his hair, his gaze dropping to the floor, unable to meet hers fully. It started a few months ago," he admitted, the words heavy and reluctant. "It wasn't meant to hurt you, Emily. I don't know how it got this far." Emily's heart twisted, a mixture of shock and disbelief gripping her chest. She wanted to scream, to cry, to demand the answers that seemed to hang just beyond his lips, but instead she sat frozen, the room heavy with unspoken accusations and the fragile remnants of trust. "And you thought hiding it would keep our family safe?" she asked, her voice breaking as tears streaked down her cheeks. "David, do you even realize what you've done to us? To Liam?" He reached out, his hand trembling as he brushed her arm. But she pulled away, the physical contact now tainted with a bitter sense of betrayal. "I know I've made a terrible mistake," he whispered, "and I want to fix it. I love you, Emily, more than anything. I can't lose you, or Liam." But Emily's eyes, wide and filled with hurt, reflected the impossible chasm that had opened between them. She wanted to believe him, to forgive, to rebuild the life they had shared. But the weight of the hidden months, the lies, the secrecy, made every word he spoke feel fragile, like glass that could shatter at the slightest touch. For hours they sat in silence, the folder lying between them like a wedge neither could remove. Emily's mind raced, replaying the moments of their life together, trying to reconcile the loving husband she knew with the man who had betrayed her so completely. She thought of Liam, of the innocence in his eyes, and of the family they had promised to protect, and she felt the sting of fear and uncertainty that now overshadowed every memory. By the time the clock ticked past midnight, both were exhausted, physically and emotionally drained. Yet the tension lingered, a heavy shadow that neither could escape. Emily finally rose, gathering the folder in her arms, the weight of it a grim reminder of the secrets that had invaded her home. "I need time, David," she said quietly, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath it. "I need to understand what this means for us, for our family, and I need to see who you truly are, without lies, without secrets." He nodded, defeated, his eyes filled with regret, knowing that the path forward would be longer and harder than he could have imagined. As Emily climbed the stairs to Liam's room, she paused for a moment, looking back at David, seeing not just the man she had loved, but also the stranger who had betrayed her trust. And in that quiet, heart-wrenching moment, she realized that their family's foundation had been shaken, and that the journey to uncover the truth, to face the consequences, had only just begun. The morning after the confrontation, Emily woke with a heaviness she had never known, a weight that pressed on her chest with every heartbeat. Liam was already awake, tugging at her hands, his small voice asking for breakfast and stories. But Emily felt detached, her thoughts drifting to memories she had buried long ago, memories she had never shared with anyone, not even David. She poured him a bowl of cereal, watching his bright eyes and innocent laughter, and felt a pang of guilt. How could she shield him from the fractures in their family when she herself was carrying secrets that could shatter everything? Her mind wandered back years to a time when she was younger, fragile, and alone in a world that seemed too cruel to bear. She remembered Rachel, her childhood friend, the one person who had known her when she was vulnerable, when the weight of loss and betrayal had pressed down on her small shoulders. Emily's parents had died in a car accident, leaving her in the care of relatives who never truly understood her. And in those lonely nights, Rachel had been her lifeline. Yet, even Rachel didn't know everything. There was a part of Emily's past so dark and shameful, a secret she had promised herself she would never reveal. It was a past that shaped the way she loved, the way she trusted, and now, years later, it threatened to collide with her present in ways she could not foresee. As she sat quietly watching Liam play, her thoughts drifted to the night she first met David. He had been kind, patient, and seemingly unflawed. A stark contrast to the chaos she had known in her youth. She had fallen for him quickly, desperate for stability, for love, for a family she had never had. But even as their life together flourished, a part of her had remained guarded, locked away behind walls of careful secrecy. And now, with David's betrayal laid bare before her, that past seemed poised to rise up, to demand attention, to intertwine with the present in a way she could not ignore. She decided to meet Rachel that afternoon, needing someone to anchor her as the storm within her threatened to overwhelm. They met at a quiet cafe, the kind where the soft clink of cups and murmur of conversation provided a gentle backdrop to confessions. Emily's hands trembled as she sipped her tea, her eyes fixed on the window, watching the world move on outside, while her own life felt like it had paused, suspended in a moment of unbearable tension. "Rachel?" she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I've kept hidden for so long, but now it feels like it's spilling over and I can't stop it anymore." Rachel reached across the table, taking Emily's hands in hers, the warmth a fragile lifeline. "Emily, whatever it is, you know I'm here. You don't have to carry it alone." Emily's throat tightened as she drew in a shaky breath, finally allowing herself to speak the words she had buried for so long. She recounted a past love, a relationship that had ended in betrayal, the kind of heartbreak that leaves scars not visible to the eye but seared into the soul. She spoke of mistakes, of choices forced by circumstance, and of a child she had lost before ever truly knowing the joy of motherhood, a secret she had kept even from David. The confession poured out, raw and painful, leaving her drained yet strangely lighter. The act of sharing her hidden truth, giving her a fragile sense of control amidst the chaos of her present. Rachel listened quietly, her eyes filled with compassion and understanding, never interrupting, never judging. When Emily finally paused, a single tear slipping down her cheek, Rachel squeezed her hands and whispered, "You are stronger than you know. This past, as heavy as it is, does not define you. But you need to be honest now, with yourself and with David, because secrets left in the shadows will only hurt the people you love." Emily nodded, knowing Rachel was right. The hidden past she had protected so fiercely could no longer remain buried, not with the present unraveling around her. She had to confront it, to face it head-on, even if it meant shaking the very foundations of her family once more. Returning home, Emily felt a mix of dread and determination, the knowledge of her past intersecting with the uncertainty of her present. Liam greeted her with a smile, oblivious to the storm that had unfolded in her heart, and she hugged him tightly, vowing silently that she would protect him from the consequences of adult mistakes. As she prepared dinner, her mind replayed the events with David, the evidence of his affair, the confrontation, and now the awareness that both of their lives were built on fragile truths, hidden secrets, and unspoken regrets. The realization struck her with a cold clarity. Healing would be messy, painful, and uncertain. But the first step had to be honesty, no matter how devastating the cost. That night, as Emily lay awake again, listening to Liam's soft breathing from the next room, she understood that the journey ahead would demand courage she wasn't sure she possessed. The walls of their home, once a sanctuary, now felt like barriers holding back truths that refused to remain silent. Secrets from the past, lies from the present, and the innocence of a child all collided in her mind, a tangled web of emotion and suspense that threatened to unravel everything she had loved. And yet, beneath the fear and sorrow, a small spark of determination flickered. She would uncover the truth, confront the betrayal, and face whatever consequences awaited, for the sake of her son, for the sake of herself, and perhaps for the fragile hope of saving the family she still longed to protect. The days that followed were tense, a fragile calm lingering over the Carter household. But beneath the surface, a storm was gathering that neither Emily nor David could ignore. Emily moved through the house with a heightened awareness, noting every glance, every hesitation, every small sign that betrayed the cracks in their once stable life. David tried to maintain normalcy, helping Liam with his toys, making small gestures of affection. But Emily's eyes had begun to see past the facade. Every smile, every whispered word, now carried the weight of hidden truths, and she realized that trust, once broken, could not be repaired with mere gestures. One evening, while David was preparing dinner, Emily found herself lingering near the counter, her mind restless, replaying the evidence she had uncovered, the confrontation, and her confession to Rachel. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for a glass, her thoughts colliding in chaotic waves. She realized that their secrets, both his and hers, were no longer separate but intertwined, a dangerous web of deception that threatened to engulf them both. David noticed her distance, the way her eyes darted, and he paused, sensing the weight she carried. "Emily," he said softly, "we need to talk. I can't keep pretending everything's okay. We need to face this together." Emily looked at him, her heart pounding, the mixture of love and betrayal almost too much to bear. "David, we are beyond pretending," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We have to confront everything. The affair, the secrets, everything we've been hiding. If we don't, we'll lose more than just trust. We'll lose ourselves. And Liam too." David nodded, swallowing hard, the reality of their situation pressing down on him with an intensity he had tried to ignore. He set down the knife he had been using to chop vegetables and gestured for her to sit. The conversation that followed was long, painful, and raw, each confession opening wounds that neither had known how to treat. Emily revealed more of her past, the hidden mistakes, the heartbreak she had endured, the moments she had buried deep in order to survive. David listened, his hands gripping the edge of the counter, eyes wide with a mixture of shock, guilt, and awe at the strength she had carried all these years. He knew then that their lives had always been complicated, shaped by shadows they had tried to hide from each other. And now those shadows were emerging, demanding acknowledgement. When it was his turn, he spoke honestly about the affair, about the confusion, the fleeting moments of temptation, and the guilt that had haunted him from the start. Every word was heavy, and Emily felt both her anger and sorrow rise with each revelation. The tension between them grew palpable, a quiet storm that threatened to break the fragile bonds holding their family together. Liam, sensing the emotional turbulence, became clingier, his small hands seeking comfort from his mother, his innocent eyes reflecting the confusion and fear that he did not fully understand. Emily held him close, her own tears mingling with his soft sighs, and realized that their family, once a source of security, now stood at a crossroads. The choices they made in the coming days would determine whether it would crumble completely or emerge from the wreckage stronger, though scarred, than before. In the nights that followed, Emily and David attempted small steps toward understanding, talking quietly after Liam slept. Each discussion a delicate balance between forgiveness and accountability. Yet beneath the tentative efforts, the shadows of secrecy lingered, and Emily found herself haunted not only by his betrayal, but by the fear of what might still be hidden. Every unopened message, every unexplained absence became a potential threat, and the tension in the house was nearly tangible, a constant reminder that the truth had layers still waiting to be unearthed. One evening, as Emily walked past the study, she noticed the folder of evidence lying untouched on the desk. For a moment, a surge of panic ran through her, wondering if he had tried to remove or alter anything. But instead the folder remained, a silent testament to the honesty they were attempting to cultivate. She opened it again, her eyes scanning the photographs and letters, realizing that the past could not be undone, but, perhaps with effort, the present could be reshaped. She looked at David, who was watching her silently, and saw the reflection of his own pain and regret mirrored in her eyes. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, with tension and tentative hope, a fragile equilibrium that could shatter at any moment. Emily knew that the coming days would demand courage, clarity, and unyielding honesty. Their secrets, their fears, and their betrayals had collided, forming a labyrinth of emotions that required navigation with care. And as she climbed the stairs to check on Liam, she whispered softly into the quiet night, a promise to herself and to her son. They would face the shadows together. They would confront the truths that threatened to destroy them. And perhaps, through the pain, they would find a path to healing, even if it was lined with heartbreak and regret. A few days later, Emily began noticing small, subtle signs that something far more dangerous than a mere affair was unfolding. David seemed increasingly restless, often leaving the house under vague pretenses and returning with a tense, haunted expression. Emily's mind raced, recalling the cryptic warning from Mr. Thompson, the cemetery caretaker, and a shiver ran down her spine. Something about Sophia, the woman behind the betrayal, felt deliberate, manipulative, and dangerous, and Emily knew in her bones that this was no ordinary affair. She couldn't shake the feeling that her family, the home she had worked so hard to build, was under threat in ways she could not yet see. That evening, while David was out, Emily's curiosity and growing unease led her to check the messages she had discovered earlier. Her heart raced as she scrolled through the conversation between David and Sophia. At first, it seemed like casual exchanges, but then she noticed a recurring mention of Liam. Innocent, indirect references at first, but gradually the tone shifted. Sophia appeared to be hinting at involvement with the boy, suggesting plans that Emily could barely comprehend. Panic surged through her veins, her hands trembling, as she realized that the betrayal had reached beyond her heart and into the safety of her son. The stakes had escalated from emotional pain to a tangible danger, and Emily understood that immediate action was required. When David returned, Emily confronted him with a trembling voice, her eyes flashing with fear and anger. "David, she's not just someone you were seeing," Emily said, her voice breaking. "She's involved with Liam. She's planning something, and I don't know what yet. But it's serious. You need to tell me everything." David's face paled, the weight of the secret finally surfacing fully. He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands, and for a long moment, Emily feared that the fragile thread of honesty they had been attempting to rebuild would snap completely. She's been trying to manipulate me," David admitted, his voice strained. "She wanted access to Liam, to create a rift, to control me. I didn't realize how far she would go." Emily's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of anger, fear, and disbelief threatening to overwhelm her. She paced the room, her mind spinning, imagining what Sophia could do, the dangers she could pose, and the urgency of protecting Liam from her manipulations. The reality of the situation hit her hard. This was no longer about betrayal or heartbreak alone. It was about the safety of her child and the survival of the family she still loved fiercely. Determined not to be paralyzed by fear, Emily and David began making plans, speaking in hushed tones late at night while Liam slept. They changed routines, monitored communications, and tried to predict Sophia's moves, each day filled with anxiety and tension that left them both emotionally exhausted. Yet, in the midst of fear and uncertainty, a strange clarity emerged. Emily realized that the strength she had found in confronting her past, combined with the resolve to protect her son, gave her a courage she had never known. She and David, despite the betrayal, were forced to work together, united not by trust yet, but by necessity, their survival intertwined in ways that neither could ignore. One night, Emily could no longer sleep and decided to visit the cemetery, needing the calm of Mr. Thompson's presence. As she walked among the tombstones, she recounted the recent discoveries, the escalating danger, and the realization that Sophia's intentions were far from innocent. Mr. Thompson listened silently, nodding occasionally, his eyes sharp and knowing. "I told you," he said finally, his voice low. "Sometimes betrayal is only the beginning. Watch closely, Emily. Some people hide darkness behind smiles, and not all secrets remain hidden until it is too late." Emily shivered, feeling the weight of his words settle heavily on her shoulders. The world outside the cemetery seemed quiet, peaceful, yet Emily knew better. A storm was gathering, one that would test the limits of her courage, her love, and her resolve to protect the only family she truly had left. By the time she returned home, the sky was dark, and Liam slept peacefully, unaware of the shadows threatening his safety. Emily held him close, her mind racing with strategies, warnings, and plans, but also with a newfound determination. She would not let Sophia destroy her family. She would face the danger, unravel the manipulations, and protect her son at any cost. The house was quiet, but Emily understood that the real battles were only beginning, and that the coming days would demand all her strength, all her intelligence, and all the courage she could summon to navigate the treacherous path that lay ahead. The tension in the Carter household reached a boiling point one evening, when Emily decided that waiting and planning was no longer enough. She could feel the walls closing in, the invisible threat of Sophia looming ever closer, and she knew that confronting the danger head-on was the only way to protect Liam and the fragile remains of her family. David sat in the living room, his face etched with guilt and fear, as Emily approached, holding Liam's small hand in hers. The boy's innocent eyes looked up at her, and she felt a wave of determination crash through her, a protective instinct sharper than any fear she had felt before. "David," Emily began, her voice firm yet trembling, "we can't keep hiding. You need to tell me everything, every detail about her, every plan, every lie. If we don't confront this together, we could lose more than just trust. We could lose Liam." David nodded, swallowing hard, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He knew she was right, and the fear in her eyes reflected the reality he had been trying to ignore. He recounted everything, from the first message, to the subtle manipulations, to the moments when Sophia had tried to gain access to their home and their son. With each revelation, Emily's heart ached, but her resolve strengthened. She would not let fear dictate her family's future. As they spoke, a sudden knock on the front door made them both jump. Emily's pulse raced, her hands tightening around Liam's, and she motioned for David to stay back. Peering through the peephole, her stomach dropped. Sophia was standing there, a faint smile on her lips, carrying an air of calculated confidence. Without a word, Emily opened the door, her body tense, every instinct screaming that this confrontation would change everything. Sophia's eyes flicked to Liam, then to David, and finally rested on Emily with a mixture of challenge and amusement. "Hello, Emily," she said sweetly, but there was a sharpness behind the tone that sent chills down Emily's spine. "We need to talk." Emily stepped forward, her voice unwavering despite the fear pounding in her chest. "No, Sophia. There's nothing to talk about. Stay away from my family, or you'll regret it." Sophia laughed softly, a sound that made Emily's blood run cold, and for a moment, the tension in the room was almost unbearable. "You think this is just about lies and feelings?" Sophia asked, her eyes glinting dangerously. "I'm here for more than that. You have something I want, and I won't leave without it." Emily's grip on Liam tightened as a cold realization washed over her. Sophia had plans far beyond simple betrayal. She was a threat to everything Emily held dear. David stepped forward, his voice firm, yet shaking. "You're done, Sophia. Whatever you're planning, it ends here. My family is mine, and you won't hurt them." Sophia's smile faltered slightly, but the dangerous glint in her eyes remained. "We'll see about that," she said, her tone sharp, before turning on her heel and walking away, leaving a silent but heavy threat lingering in the air. Emily closed the door slowly, her knees weak, but the fear that had gripped her moments ago was now mixed with a fierce determination. She held Liam close, whispering words of reassurance, and looked at David, seeing both guilt and resolve mirrored in his eyes. That night, after Liam had fallen asleep, Emily and David sat together, their hands entwined, a fragile truce forming amidst the chaos. "We need to be stronger," Emily said softly, her voice resolute. "We can't let fear control us. We face this together, or we lose everything." David nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple, silently acknowledging the truth in her words. For the first time since the affair was uncovered, there was a sense of unity, a promise that despite the shadows threatening their family, they would not surrender without a fight. The emotional weight of betrayal and danger still lingered, but Emily felt a flicker of hope, a fragile spark that perhaps, together, they could navigate the treacherous path ahead, protect their son, and rebuild what had been broken. Outside, the night was still, But Emily could sense the storm on the horizon, the challenges yet to come, and the dangerous game that Sophia had set in motion. But inside, in the quiet of their home, there was also courage, love, and a newfound determination that even the darkest secrets could not entirely destroy. Emily knew the days ahead would demand every ounce of strength she possessed. But for Liam, for herself, and for the fragile hope of their family, she would face whatever came, no matter the cost. The following days were filled with an uneasy quiet, a silence that seemed almost unnatural, as if the world itself was holding its breath in anticipation. Emily noticed the subtle changes, the faint scratches on the doorframe, misplaced items in the living room, and messages from unknown numbers that hinted Sophia was watching them, even from afar. The feeling of being hunted gnawed at her, a constant anxiety that made her glance over her shoulder at every sound, every shadow. David tried to reassure her, but Emily could see the worry mirrored in his eyes, a reflection of the danger that had crept into their home and hearts. One late evening, as Emily checked Liam's room before bedtime, a soft chime on her phone made her freeze. An unknown number had sent a message. "You think you know the truth? You don't know everything yet. Watch carefully." Her hands shook as she read the words, and a cold realization settled over her. Sophia's intentions were far more calculated than she had ever imagined. This wasn't about a simple affair or manipulation. This was about power, control, and a vendetta Emily couldn't yet comprehend. The next morning, Emily insisted on visiting Mr. Thompson at the cemetery again. She needed guidance, someone who could see the layers of deception that were hidden in plain sight. The caretaker listened silently as she recounted the threats, the messages, and the increasingly alarming signs of intrusion. "I warned you," he said, his voice steady but grave. "Some people don't act out of love or desire. They act out of obsession, and obsession is dangerous. Watch her closely, Emily. Her game is bigger than you think, and the house is only the beginning." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The shadows she had feared were no longer abstract. They were real, stalking her family with purpose. That night, as she and David devised a plan to safeguard Liam and their home, an unexpected twist shook them to the core. A call came through on David's phone, an unfamiliar voice speaking with authority and urgency. "David Carter?" the voice asked. "This is Detective Lawson. We've been investigating Sophia Marshall for months. She's connected to a series of threats and manipulations in other families. We believe she's targeting you and your wife for reasons beyond a personal vendetta. We need you to cooperate with us immediately." David's hands went cold as he turned to Emily, whose eyes mirrored his shock. Sophia's reach, her manipulations, were far deeper than they had imagined. Emily felt her heart race, the adrenaline and fear mingling into a clarity she hadn't felt before. Sophia was not just an enemy of their hearts. She was a real, present danger, capable of orchestrating a plan that could destroy everything they loved. The realization forced Emily and David into an immediate strategy session. Every detail, every possible move of Sophia had to be anticipated. Trust, the fragile trust they had been trying to rebuild, was now essential, for without it, they would be ill-prepared for the storm that was closing in. As they worked late into the night, Emily glanced at Liam, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the shadowy forces circling their lives. A fierce determination ignited within her. A promise that no matter how dangerous Sophia's obsession, no matter how high the stakes, she would protect her son. And as the night deepened, Emily understood something critical. The battle ahead was not just about secrets or betrayal. It was about survival, courage and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. A bond that even the darkest schemes could never sever. The twist was clear. Sophia's intentions were not just personal. They were calculated, strategic, and dangerous, and the Carters were now entangled in a game they could not afford to lose. The question that hung in the air, heavy with suspense, was simple yet terrifying. How far would Sophia go, and could Emily and David protect what mattered most before it was too late? The next evening, Emily felt a restless energy she could not shake, a sense that Sophia's presence was no longer distant. The warnings, the messages, the subtle signs, they had all converged into an undeniable reality. Sophia was close, and the danger was immediate. Emily and David had fortified their routines, checked locks, installed cameras, and even enlisted Detective Lawson's guidance. But the tension was palpable, a silent pressure that made every sound in the house seem amplified. Liam's laughter, usually a source of joy, now reminded Emily of everything she had to protect. As David stepped out briefly to take a call from the detective, Emily decided to do one final check of the house. She moved quietly through each room, listening for any hint of intrusion. When she reached the living room, her heart stopped. The window by the sliding door, usually locked, was slightly ajar, the faint breeze brushing the curtains. Panic surged through her, and instinctively she grabbed her phone to call David. Before she could dial, a shadow flickered across the floor. Someone had entered. Her breath caught as she instinctively moved toward Liam's room, clutching a small kitchen knife for protection. "Emily!" A voice called from the hallway, sharp and familiar. Sophia stood there, a calculated smile on her lips, her eyes glinting with malice. "I told you I would see you, and I did." Emily's hands trembled, but she steadied herself, planting her feet firmly, refusing to show fear. "Stay away from my family," she said, her voice low but unwavering. "You are not welcome here." Sophia laughed softly, a sound that sent chills down Emily's spine. "I think you misunderstand. I'm already here, and there's nothing you can do to stop what's coming." Emily's mind raced. She had prepared for threats, for manipulation, for emotional games. But the cold, calculated danger in Sophia's eyes was something else entirely. David's voice suddenly came through the phone speaker, tense and commanding. "Sophia, step away from the house. Now! You're being monitored, and the authorities are on their way." Sophia's smile faltered slightly as she glanced at the phone, then back at Emily. "Authorities won't stop me," she said, her tone deadly serious. "You think you can protect your son with locks and alarms? This is bigger than you, Emily. This is about control, and I won't lose." Emily backed slowly toward Liam's room, every nerve on edge. Her protective instinct flared, and she realized that there would be no room for hesitation. She had to confront the immediate danger, not just for herself, but for Liam. With a deep, steadying breath, she stood tall, her voice strong. "You're not touching him. You're not touching us. Leave now, or you'll regret it." Sophia's expression hardened, her smile vanishing, replaced by a calculated fury. Emily could see the obsession, the danger, the unhinged resolve in her eyes, and knew that the confrontation was only minutes away from escalating into something irreversible. Suddenly, a siren wailed in the distance, a sound Emily had prayed for, but also feared. Sophia's eyes flicked toward the window, a mix of irritation and frustration, and in that split second, Emily realized she had bought herself just enough time. Sophia's presence, her intent, was still a threat, but the authorities were closing in, forcing her to retreat. With a final venomous glare, Sophia stepped back into the shadows, her words lingering like poison. "This isn't over. I will find a way." Then she disappeared into the night, leaving Emily trembling but resolute, Liam safe in her arms, and the house echoing with the adrenaline of survival. Emily sank to the floor, clutching Liam tightly, her body shaking from the tension and fear. But beneath it all, a fierce determination burned. The confrontation had been close, the danger tangible, yet she had protected her family. She looked at David through the video call, seeing his relieved but strained expression, and realized that the true battle was just beginning. Sophia's obsession, her calculated plans, and the hidden dangers that still lurked meant that vigilance, courage, and unyielding love would be required in the days to come. And Emily, though exhausted and shaken, knew one truth with absolute certainty. No matter what came, she would never let anything or anyone harm her son. The morning after the terrifying confrontation, Emily awoke with a fierce clarity. She knew that waiting or reacting impulsively would only put Liam and herself at greater risk. David was already awake, reviewing messages from Detective Lawson, their faces reflecting exhaustion and determination. The events of the previous night had made it painfully clear. Sophia's obsession was methodical, her manipulations dangerous, and the Carters could no longer rely on hope alone. They needed a plan, precise and unyielding. Emily sat down at the kitchen table, her mind racing. "We can't let her control the narrative anymore," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We need to uncover everything she's done, every step she's taken to manipulate us, and use it against her. If we wait for her to strike again, we lose." David nodded, appreciating her clarity, and together they began outlining a counter-strategy. Cameras would monitor every point of entry, communications would be scrutinized, and contacts with Sophia's known associates would be investigated. But beyond surveillance, Emily knew that confronting Sophia with undeniable truth and evidence was their strongest weapon. By late afternoon, Detective Lawson arrived at the house, his presence a calming yet urgent force. He shared reports of Sophia's past manipulations, her obsession with multiple families, and her ability to orchestrate situations to create fear and dependency. Emily listened intently, piecing together the patterns, understanding for the first time the full scope of Sophia's danger. "She's meticulous," Lawson said. "Everything she does is calculated. But if we expose her network, her tactics, and her lies publicly, we can force her hand. That's when she becomes vulnerable." Emily felt a surge of resolve. The pieces of the puzzle were finally coming together. As evening fell, Emily and David enacted the first phase of their counter-strategy. They compiled evidence from the messages, videos, and photographs, organizing them meticulously. Every detail that Sophia had tried to manipulate, every threat she had made, and every subtle intrusion was documented. Emily's hands shook slightly as she reviewed a message where Sophia had hinted at endangering Liam, proof that would ensure Sophia could not continue her game without consequences. The weight of the responsibility pressed on her, but alongside it came a fierce determination. No longer would Sophia's shadows dominate their lives. Then a breakthrough arrived. While reviewing the photos and messages, Emily noticed a pattern, a repeated location mentioned subtly in Sophia's messages, a cafe that appeared in multiple photos as a meeting point. David and Detective Lawson immediately coordinated a stakeout. Hours of patient waiting yielded results. Sophia appeared at the location, interacting with unknown individuals in ways that confirmed the Carters' fears. It was more than obsession. It was a plan, carefully laid, and now they finally had the proof to confront her directly. That night back at home, Emily held Liam close while David spoke quietly on the phone with Lawson, arranging the next steps. The tension was still thick, but there was a new edge to their resolve. Evidence in hand, a clear picture of Sophia's plans, and the support of law enforcement. The Carters were no longer entirely at her mercy. Emily whispered softly to Liam, reassuring him without revealing the danger, and looked at David. In that shared glance, a silent understanding passed between them. The battle was far from over, but now, for the first time, they were not just reacting. They were taking control. As the night deepened, Emily reflected on the journey so far. Betrayal, fear, secrets, and danger had tested her to her limits, but it had also revealed her strength, her determination, and the unbreakable bond she shared with her family. Sophia's manipulations had pushed them to the edge, but Emily now knew that with courage, strategy, and unity, they could confront the shadows and emerge stronger. And as Liam slept peacefully in her arms, Emily silently vowed, no matter what Sophia tried next, she would be ready. And nothing, no obsession, no lies, no danger, would break the family she had fought so hard to protect. The night was heavy with tension, the kind that made the air feel thick and every shadow a potential threat. Emily sat in the living room, Liam asleep in his room, David beside her, both of them aware that tonight could decide the fate of their family. Every plan, every precaution, every ounce of courage would be tested. Sophia, driven by obsession and manipulation, had pushed them to the edge, but Emily now knew that fear alone would not protect her son. Only action, only unity, and unwavering resolve would. Detective Lawson and his team were stationed discreetly around the house, ready to intervene the moment Sophia made a move. Emily, with trembling hands, checked the cameras one last time, confirming that all possible entrances were monitored. The evidence they had gathered, combined with the authorities' support, had finally tilted the scales. Emily looked at David, their eyes locking in silent agreement. They would face this danger together, no matter the cost. Suddenly, a shadow moved near the window, subtle but deliberate. Emily's heart skipped, and she signaled silently to David. Through the cameras, they saw Sophia approaching, her demeanor calm, but her eyes filled with cold intent. She had come, perhaps believing she could manipulate or intimidate them one last time. But this time, Emily was ready. She stepped forward, standing in the middle of the living room, her voice steady and commanding. "Sophia, this ends tonight. You will leave and never come near my family again, or the consequences will be irreversible." Sophia froze for a moment, clearly taken aback by Emily's courage. She had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even panic, but Emily's unwavering resolve shattered her assumptions. "You don't understand," Sophia hissed, her voice tight with frustration. "I will have what I want. I always get what I want." Emily's eyes narrowed, the motherly instinct to protect Liam now blazing fiercely. "You will get nothing from us. Your obsession ends here." At that moment, Detective Lawson and his team quietly entered through the side, surrounding Sophia, leaving her no room to escape. Emily felt a mixture of adrenaline and relief as Sophia realized she had been outmaneuvered. Cornered and defeated, Sophia's mask of confidence fell away, replaced by the realization that her plans had failed. Emily's heart pounded not with fear but with triumph. She had faced the danger, protected her family, and ensured that Liam remained safe. Sophia was taken into custody, her threats neutralized, and the Carters were finally able to breathe freely. Emily held Liam tightly, feeling his small hands clutch her shirt, his innocence untouched by the chaos that had threatened to consume their lives. David joined her, and together they embraced, a family united by trials, courage, and love. Tears flowed freely, a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and the quiet joy of survival. The storm had passed, leaving scars, but also a profound understanding of the strength they possessed as a family. In the days that followed, life slowly began to return to normal. Emily and David worked together to rebuild trust, fortify their home, and nurture their bond with Liam. The shadows of the past had been confronted, the betrayal faced, and the danger neutralized, leaving behind a family stronger and more resilient than ever before. Emily often thought back to the lessons learned, the power of honesty, the strength of love, and the unbreakable bond between parent and child. One evening, as Liam played in the yard, Emily and David watched him with quiet smiles. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over their home, and for the first time in months, peace settled over the Carters. Emily whispered softly to David, "We survived. We protected him, and no matter what comes next, we'll face it together." David nodded, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple, the weight of the past finally lifting. And as they stood together, watching their son laugh and play, Emily felt a heart-touching truth echoing in her soul. Love, courage, and unity could withstand even the darkest shadows, and the Carters family, though tested and scarred, would endure. The storm was over, the danger vanquished, and the Carters, stronger than ever, had reclaimed their life, their love, and their home. A testament to the resilience of the human heart, the power of family, and the unwavering courage of a mother determined to protect her child at any cost.